The morning sun cast long shadows across the Thompson family's sprawling suburban home as Sarah frantically searched through kitchen drawers, her hands trembling with anxiety. Today was supposed to be perfect. Today was Tommy's 8th birthday, and she had promised him the celebration of his dreams. But now, with less than 4 hours until the party, everything was falling apart. "Where is it?" she muttered, slamming another drawer shut. The custom birthday cake she had ordered 3 weeks ago was sitting in the wrong bakery across town, decorated with someone else's child's name. The bounce house company had just called to inform her that their truck had broken down, and the entertainment she had booked was stuck in traffic due to a highway accident. David walked into the kitchen, already dressed in his business suit despite it being Saturday. His phone was pressed against his ear, and he was speaking in hushed, urgent tones about some crisis at his law firm. Sarah felt her chest tighten with frustration. This was exactly what she had feared would happen. "David," she called out, but he held up a finger, signaling for her to wait. The gesture sent a surge of anger through her tired body. She had been planning this party alone for weeks while he buried himself in work, and now when she needed him most, he was still prioritizing his career over their family. Tommy bounded down the stairs, his face glowing with excitement. He wore his favorite superhero pajamas and clutched a small action figure in his hand. "Is everything ready for my party, Mom? Are all my friends coming? Will there be a real magician like you promised?" Sarah's heart broke a little as she looked into her son's hopeful eyes. She forced a smile and knelt down to his level. "Of course, sweetheart. Everything will be wonderful." The lie tasted bitter in her mouth, but she couldn't bear to disappoint him on his special day. David finally ended his call and turned toward them, but his phone immediately rang again. Without even looking at Sarah or Tommy, he answered it and walked toward his home office. "Thompson speaking. Yes, I know it's Saturday, but this merger won't wait." "Daddy!" Tommy called after him, but David was already closing the office door behind him. The little boy's shoulders sagged with disappointment, and Sarah felt her anger transform into something deeper and more painful. She had married David 12 years ago, believing they would build a life together where family came first. He had been different then, attentive and present, but success at his law firm had gradually consumed him, leaving Sarah to manage their home and raise Tommy largely on her own. She had tried to be understanding, telling herself that his hard work was for their family's benefit. But today felt like the final straw. The doorbell rang, and Sarah opened it to find her sister Emma standing on the porch with her arms full of colorful balloons and a knowing look in her eyes. Emma had always been able to read Sarah like a book, and one glance at her sister's stressed expression told her everything she needed to know. "Let me guess," Emma said, stepping inside and handing the balloons to Tommy. "The perfect party is not so perfect. And David is locked in his office taking calls about work?" Sarah nodded, feeling tears threaten to spill over. "Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. The cake is ruined, the entertainment canceled, and David doesn't even care. He's been on the phone all morning about some stupid merger that apparently can't wait until Monday." Emma set down her purse and rolled up her sleeves. "Then we'll make this the best birthday party Tommy has ever had. With or without David's help. But first, you need to decide what you're going to do about your marriage." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Sarah had been avoiding this conversation with herself for months, but seeing Tommy's disappointed face when his father ignored him had crystallized something inside her. She was tired of making excuses for David's absence. She was tired of being a single parent in a marriage. Tommy tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, can we call Dad out of his office? I want to show him the new trick I learned with my yo-yo." Sarah looked down at her son's eager face, then at the closed office door where David's muffled voice could be heard discussing legal strategies. A decision began forming in her mind, one that would change everything for their small family. "You know what, Tommy?" she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. Today is your day, and nothing is going to ruin it. Aunt Emma and I are going to throw you the most amazing party this neighborhood has ever seen." As Sarah spoke these words, she realized she wasn't just talking about the party anymore. She was talking about taking control of her life and her son's happiness, with or without David's participation. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. Emma squeezed her sister's hand supportively, understanding the deeper meaning behind Sarah's determination. They both knew that this birthday party would become a turning point, not just for Tommy, but for the entire Thompson family. The morning was slipping away, and there was work to do. But for the first time in months, Sarah felt a spark of her old self returning, the woman who used to solve problems and make things happen, before she had gotten lost in the shadow of David's career and her own disappointment. Tommy ran to the window and pressed his nose against the glass, watching for his friends to arrive. His innocent excitement reminded Sarah of what was truly important. Whatever happened between her and David could be dealt with later. Right now, she had a little boy's birthday to save, and she wasn't going to let anything stop her from giving him the celebration he deserved. 2 hours later, the Thompson backyard had been transformed into a wonderland that exceeded even Tommy's wildest dreams. Sarah and Emma had worked with the determination of women on a mission, turning disaster into magic through sheer willpower and creativity. When the original cake fell through, they had driven to 3 different grocery stores, buying every superhero-themed cupcake they could find and arranging them into a magnificent tower. The missing bounce house was replaced with an obstacle course made from pool noodles, hula hoops, and cardboard boxes that the children found even more exciting than any rental equipment. Emma had called her friend Marcus, a talented musician who happened to be free that afternoon. He arrived with his guitar and a bag full of props, ready to entertain the children with interactive songs and stories. The backyard filled with the sound of children's laughter as Marcus led them in a superhero training academy, complete with cape-making stations and strength challenges. Tommy was radiant with joy, his earlier disappointment about his father forgotten as he ran from activity to activity with his friends. Sarah watched from the kitchen window as she prepared sandwiches, feeling a bittersweet mixture of pride and sadness. She had managed to save the day, but the effort had cost her something she couldn't quite name. David's office door remained firmly shut, the sound of his voice occasionally drifting out as he continued his marathon of business calls. Several times children had knocked on the door asking if Tommy's dad wanted to see their costumes or try the obstacle course, but he had barely acknowledged them through the glass. "Sarah, you've outdone yourself," said Jennifer Martinez, one of the neighborhood mothers who had stayed to help supervise. "Tommy looks like the happiest boy in the world. You should be proud." Pride wasn't exactly what Sarah felt as she watched her son blow out the candles on his cupcake tower. She felt accomplished, yes, but also deeply alone. This should have been a moment shared with David, a memory they created together as a family. Instead, she felt like a single mother putting on a brave face while her husband treated their son's birthday like an inconvenience. As the afternoon wore on, more parents began arriving to pick up their children. They complimented Sarah on the creative decorations and the children's obvious enjoyment, but their praise only highlighted David's absence more sharply. She found herself making excuses she had never planned to make. "David is dealing with an emergency at work," she explained to the Hendersons. "You know how lawyers are, always on call." The words felt hollow, even as she spoke them. Emma appeared at her side with a plate of leftover cupcakes. "You don't have to keep protecting him, you know. People aren't blind. They can see what's happening here." Sarah's carefully maintained composure began to crack. "What am I supposed to do, Emma? Announce to the neighborhood that my husband cares more about his career than his own son? That I'm essentially raising Tommy alone while pretending everything is fine?" "Maybe it's time to stop pretending," Emma said gently. For Tommy's sake, if not for your own." As if summoned by their conversation, Tommy approached them with chocolate frosting on his cheek and a concerned expression. "Mom, is Dad sick? Why hasn't he come outside all day? Did I do something wrong?" The innocent question hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her 8-year-old son was blaming himself for his father's emotional absence, and the injustice of it filled her with a rage so pure it surprised her. "You haven't done anything wrong, sweetheart," she said, kneeling down and wiping the frosting from his face. Sometimes grown-ups have to work, even when they don't want to. But even as she said the words, she realized she was still making excuses. Tommy deserved better than excuses. He deserved a father who showed up, and a mother who demanded nothing less. The last of the guests were leaving when David finally emerged from his office, loosening his tie and looking around the backyard with apparent surprise at the extent of the decorations and the obvious signs of a successful party. "Looks like everything worked out fine," he said to Sarah, as if his absence had been a minor detail rather than a glaring omission. "I knew you'd handle it." The casual dismissal of her efforts and his assumption that everything was fine ignited something in Sarah that had been building all day. "Handle it? David, I didn't just handle it, I saved it. While you were locked in your office treating our son's birthday like background noise, I scrambled to fix every disaster and create something magical for Tommy." David looked genuinely confused by her anger. "I was working, Sarah. I thought you understood that this merger is crucial for my career, for our financial future." "What about Tommy's future?" Sarah shot back, her voice rising. "What about his need for a father who actually participates in his life? He asked me 3 times today if he had done something wrong because you couldn't be bothered to come outside for even 5 minutes. Tommy, who had been playing quietly nearby, looked up with wide eyes at the tension in his parents' voices. The sight of his worried expression broke something loose in Sarah's chest. "You know what, David? I'm done. I'm done making excuses for you. I'm done pretending this is normal. And I'm done raising our son alone while you chase the next promotion." David's phone buzzed with another incoming call, and without thinking, he glanced down at it. That unconscious gesture, that immediate impulse to check work even in the middle of their argument, crystallized everything for Sarah. "Don't you dare answer that phone," she said, her voice deadly quiet. "For once in your life, choose your family over your career." David looked at the phone, then at Sarah, then at Tommy, who was watching them with confusion and growing alarm. For a moment, Sarah thought he might finally understand what she was asking of him. She held her breath, hoping against hope that he would choose them. The phone continued buzzing insistently in his hand, and Sarah could see the internal struggle playing out on his face. This was the moment that would define everything that came next, and they both knew it. The afternoon sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the backyard that had hosted such joy just hours before. The party decorations fluttered in the evening breeze, and Tommy clutched his new action figure tightly, sensing that something important was happening between his parents but not understanding what. David stared at the buzzing phone in his hand for what felt like an eternity. Sarah watched his face, seeing the moment when years of prioritizing work over family crystallized into a single defining choice. The backyard fell silent except for the gentle rustling of birthday decorations in the evening breeze. Then, to Sarah's amazement, David powered off the phone completely and slipped it into his pocket. "You're right," he said quietly, his voice heavy with realization. "I've been a terrible father, and an even worse husband." He looked at Tommy, who was standing uncertainly between them, still clutching his action figure. "Tommy, I owe you the biggest apology in the world." Tommy approached his father cautiously, as if David were a stranger he wasn't sure he could trust. The distance between them spoke volumes about how their relationship had deteriorated without David even noticing. "I missed your whole party, didn't I?" David asked, kneeling down to Tommy's level. "I missed seeing you with your friends. I missed the cake. I missed everything that mattered to you." Tommy nodded solemnly. "Mom made it really special, though. There was an obstacle course, and Marcus played guitar, and we learned how to be real superheroes. But I kept wishing you were there to see it." The simple honesty in his son's voice broke something open in David's chest. He realized that he had been so focused on providing financial security for his family that he had forgotten to actually be present for the life he was supposedly working to protect. "Can you show me the obstacle course?" David asked. "Maybe we could try it together?" For the first time all day, Tommy's face lit up with genuine excitement about sharing something with his father. "Really? You want to try it? It's super hard, but I bet you could do it if I teach you." As Tommy eagerly led David around the backyard, explaining each challenge he and Emma had created, Sarah felt a complex mixture of emotions. She was glad to see them connecting, but she also felt the weight of all the months when she had handled everything alone. One moment of presence didn't erase years of absence. Emma, who had been quietly cleaning up in the background, approached Sarah with a gentle smile. "It's a start," she said softly. "Is it enough?" Sarah asked, watching David attempt to crawl through a tunnel made of cardboard boxes while Tommy cheered him on. "Can people really change, or am I just setting myself up for more disappointment?" "I don't know," Emma admitted. "But Tommy deserves to see his father try. And so do you." As the evening progressed, David threw himself into the remaining party activities with an enthusiasm that surprised everyone, including himself. He helped Tommy demonstrate the superhero training course for Emma, participated in the cape-making activity that had been abandoned earlier, and even convinced Sarah to join them for a family photo in front of the cupcake tower. But when Tommy finally went to bed, exhausted and happy from his day, the real conversation between David and Sarah was just beginning. They sat on the back porch, surrounded by the remnants of the party they had managed to save. The decorations that had seemed so magical during the day now looked tired and slightly ridiculous in the porch light. But they represented something important that neither of them wanted to disturb just yet. "I know I can't fix this with one evening," David said finally. "I know I've been absent for so much more than just today. But Sarah, I want to try. I want to figure out how to be the husband and father you both deserve." Sarah looked at him carefully, searching his face for signs of the man she had fallen in love with 12 years ago. "I want to believe you, David, but I've heard promises before. What's going to be different this time?" "I'm going to start by talking to my partners about reducing my caseload. I've been telling myself that all the extra work was temporary, that once I made senior partner everything would calm down. But the truth is, there will always be another case, another merger, another crisis if I keep prioritizing work over everything else. And what if they say no? What if reducing your workload means giving up the career advancement you've worked so hard for?" David was quiet for a long moment, considering the question seriously. "Then I'll have to decide what success really means to me. Is it worth being successful at work if I fail as a father, if I lose the people who matter most to me?" Sarah felt a flicker of hope, but she tempered it with realism. "Change isn't easy, David. You've been living this way for years. There are going to be moments when you slip back into old patterns, when the pressure at work makes you forget what you promised here tonight." "Then remind me," he said, reaching for her hand. "Don't let me disappear again. Don't make excuses for me or protect me from the consequences of my choices. If I start prioritizing work over family again, call me out on it immediately." "That's not fair to me," Sarah said, pulling her hand back. "I shouldn't have to be the marriage police, constantly monitoring your behavior and nagging you to be present. You're an adult, David. You need to want this change for yourself, not because I'm forcing you into it." The honesty of her response hit David harder than any anger could have. He realized that he had been asking her to take responsibility for his transformation, just as she had been taking responsibility for everything else in their family life. "You're right," he acknowledged. "This has to come from me, and I have to prove it through my actions, not just my words." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts about the future of their marriage and family. The evening air was cool and filled with the scent of the neighbor's jasmine, creating a peaceful atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the emotional intensity of the day. "I saved Tommy's party today," Sarah said finally, "but I can't save our marriage by myself. If you want this family to work, you have to show up for it. Not just tonight, not just on birthdays and holidays, but consistently, day after day." "I understand," David replied. "And I want you to know that seeing Tommy's face today when he realized I had missed everything important to him, that's not a feeling I ever want to experience again. I don't want to be a stranger in my own family." As they went inside and turned off the porch light, both David and Sarah knew that this conversation was just the beginning of a much longer journey. Trust would have to be rebuilt slowly, new patterns would have to be established, and there would undoubtedly be setbacks along the way. But for the first time in months, Sarah felt like she wasn't facing the future alone. Whether their marriage could truly be repaired remained to be seen, but at least now they were both committed to trying. Tommy's birthday party had become something none of them expected, not just a celebration of another year in a little boy's life, but a catalyst for honest conversation about what kind of family they wanted to be going forward. In the morning, David would face the challenge of following through on his promises. Sarah would have to learn to trust again while protecting her own heart. And Tommy would hopefully continue to benefit from having both parents present and engaged in his life. The birthday decorations would come down, but the lessons learned on this day would shape the Thompson family for years to come. Sometimes the most important gifts aren't the ones wrapped in colorful paper, but the ones that emerge from moments of crisis when people choose love over convenience, presence over productivity, and family over everything else that demands their attention.